What is up, my boys? You know how it is. It is KC Cup month here in Duel Links, which means there's really no content to talk about. There's like some roaming duelists and some other bullshit, and to be honest, it's none of it's exciting whatsoever. And I think this is by design. I think they don't want to release hype content, if you will. If Master Duel hype content's coming out and vice versa, they don't want to release hype Duel Links hype Master Duel content if hype Duel Links content is coming out. So I figured instead of making a random video talking about the news and upcoming duelists and all that boring shit in Duel Links, how about we just skip the month altogether and talk about Sora. Sora's coming out. Fluffles plus Frightfur is his deck. I know you see Master Duel in the back, but I promise this is a Duel Links based video. I figured, hey, why not take in the Fluffles and Frightfur archetype into Master Duel to see what cards are out, and see if, you know, how much of this archetype we could potentially get in Duel Links before just breaking the Duel Links meta in half. If you like this type of content, this type of video, remember, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, leave a comment down below letting me know that you like me, you know, just basically looking at cards that we know are confirmed to come and how much of the archetype can come. I'm not going to read every single card, but we're definitely going to read the extra deck monsters because this is a fusion-based archetype. Sora in the anime is all about that fusion Shokan. So we'll definitely read the fusion monsters. We'll read the spells and traps, and then a couple of the basic monsters that caught my eye, we will read and see just how powerful this archetype is, and if it can come into Duel Links. And I'll be honest, this really feels like an archetype that can come to Duel Links. Let us get started with the fusion monsters. The one I want to talk, I'm actually going to go backwards here, because, well, actually, you know what? Forget that. We're gonna start from the beginning and then just go straight forward. 11 fusions in total. The Fluffle archetype is mixed with the Frightfur archetype. They're the same thing. They interact with each other. Typically speaking, Frightfurs are the fusions and the Fluffles are the basic monsters. And then you also have creatures like the Edge Imp Chain, which are typically the fusion materials to make the big monsters. So let's get in here. Frightfur Sheep. One Edge Imp Chain, there you go, plus any Fluffle monster. If this card battles, your opponent's cards and effects cannot be activated until the end of the damage step. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the grave, or this card in your possession destroyed by an opponent's card effect and sent to your graveyard, you can special summon this card, and if you do, it gains 800 attack. You can only use its effect once per turn. So there you go. Starts at 2k, can potentially keep climbing up to 2800 with the revival effect, making your opponent have to destroy it twice. Could definitely come to Duel Links. I could see that. Frightfur Bear. I believe this is kind of like Sora's sort of not ace monster, but one of the first boss monsters he summons, so we're going to definitely get this. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can equip that monster to this card as an equip spell card. With this effect, the equipped monster gains 1,000 attack. 3 spots, that's 3,000 potential attack points. Starts at 22, can go all the way up to 52. No problem. We can definitely get this monster. 1 Edge Imp Sabretooth plus a Fluffle Bear. So not the chain this time. We're going to have to go with a different fusion monster for that. All right, here we go. The Frightfur Wolf, again with the sabers versus with the Fluffle, any one or more Fluffle monsters. So you can actually do multiple. Must be fusion summoned with the above fusion materials. Cannot be special summoned any other ways. So you have to go in with the fusion summon. It can attack a number of times each battle phase up to the number of fusion materials for its fusion summon at 2,000 attack. Again, I think we can absolutely get this monster. No problem in terms of him being too powerful for the game. This is the, let's actually talk about the 2 fusion, the Edge Imp fusion monsters. If this card's in your graveyard, you can place 1 card from your hand to the top of your deck, special summons card in defense. Pretty cool effect. We might even see it in terms of a skill. And then the Edge Imp Chain. These are the 2 that you'll typically see as fusion material. If this card declares an attack, you can add 1 Edge Imp Chain from your deck to your hand. If it's sent from the hand or field to the graveyard, you can add 1 Frightfur card from your deck to your hand. You only use this effect once per turn. So you can kind of see how this is a very Duel Links-esque deck. All the cards kind of work together, refilling your hand. Fusion is an archetype that's constantly losing cards, so having that refill potential is really strong for the archetype. Frightful Tiger, again with that sabers with the Fluffle monster. When this card's fusion summoned, you can target cards on the field up to the number of fusion materials used for its fusion summon. Destroy them. All Frightful monsters you control gain 300 attack for each Fluffle monster, and Frightful monster you control, you can only control one Frightful tiger. So this is one of the ones that might be a little controversial when it comes to Duel Links. But yes, on summon, target cards in the field up to the number of fusion materials, again, one or more Fluffle monsters, and you can destroy them. Now, specifically, this states that up to the fusion materials, not Fluffle monsters. So at base, it's always going to pop 2 cards, which is an extremely, extremely powerful effect. This might be one of the cards that comes as a skill, or might not even come at all, because popping 2 cards in a board state where there's only 2 monsters available anytime, or 3 monster zones available anytime, 3 back row slots available anytime, and an on summon effect, so you will have to use things like Chalice, Chain, and stuff like that to stop it. This card could potentially be a little too much for Duel Links. So I'm going to put this on a maybe potential, you know, maybe as a skill, maybe as a one-of card. The effect does seem a little too good for that Duel Links metagame, in my opinion. And of course, if you guys ever disagree with me, let me know down in the comments. Frightfur Leo, an Edge M Scythe plus any Fluffle monster must be fusioned, cannot be summoned any other way. You can target one face-up monster your opponent controls, destroy it, and if you do, inflict damage to your opponent equal to the destroyed monster's original attack. So this would be half in Duel Links. You can only use this effect once per turn. This card cannot attack directly during the turn you activate this effect. I feel like this is a very balanced card when it comes to Duel Links standards. Being able to have a monster that comes out and pops 1, it kind of reminds me of Volcanosaurus, and they're really, you know, and this has a drawback just like that card. It can't attack directly, so you can't really set up lethal with just this card. You would have to follow up with other plays. The pop one, I feel, is also it's, you know, face-up monsters can't be face-down monsters. The pop one, I think that's fair for Duel Links, so I think this could come out. No problem, no problem. Frightfur Chimera. This is 3 Frightfur monsters, must be fusion summoned. If this card battles, your opponent cannot activate cards or effects until the end of the damage step. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle and sends it to the grave, you can special summon that monster to your field, but its attack is halved. You can only use this effect of Frightfur Chimera once per turn. Gains 300 attack for each monster you control that is owned by your opponent. So this is another kind of like boss monster that Sora ends up using. I feel like this card is okay. 2800 on summon, and it really doesn't get any good effects until it actually kills a monster. Yeah, sure. Your opponent not activating cards or effects until the end of the damage step is actually really, really good, because then you can also chain like chalices or destruction effects and stuff like that. But continuous effects will still be active, so it's also it's only gonna be the activated cards or effects themselves. So it's not like the greatest effect, and then the summon effect with the half attack isn't always necessarily going to be great. So I think this card could come, no real issues. Get it in there. Next up, we've got the Frightfur Sabretooth. Any Frightfur fusion monster +1 plus Fluffle and or Edge monsters. So I think they mean 1+ at that point. Weird way to say it, but that's okay. When this card is fusion summoned, you can target 1 Frightfur monster in your graveyard, special summon it. All Frightfur monsters you control gain 400. If this card is fusion summoned using 3 or more materials, it cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects. There's always an issue. Of course, this is also a Frightfur monster, so we'd get 400 attack. So it's actually 2800 on summon. The fact that this would also just summon a Frightfur monster in your grave, so it could just be the Frightfur fusion that you used to summon it, makes me think this is probably not going to come out. A 2800 monster that cannot be destroyed by battle or card effects would mean it's kind of like the same problem with Bloom Diva, right? Like if we get something this powerful, this is like the only thing you'd get, and you'd have a crazy skill that would lock you in, and I'd rather it just not be that way. So I'm going to go ahead and say can't come to Duel Links. Moving right along, we got ourselves the Frightful Kraken, 1 Edge Imp monster plus a Fluffle monster. Once per turn, you can target 1 monster your opponent controls, send it to the graveyard. Send it, not destroy. Just get that out of the way. This card cannot attack directly the turn this effect is activated. This card can make a second attack during each battle phase. Once per turn at the end of the battle phase, if this card battled, you can change it to defense position. Now this, I was a little on the fence about, but I don't know. So here's the thing, right? It can't attack directly the turn it activates its effect, but it can make a second attack during each battle phase, but it's only 2200 body. So, and then the biggest problem to me is the actual like material. Any Edge Imp monster plus any Fluffle monster, you get this fantastic monster. You can target one monster your opponent controls. Doesn't matter if it's face up, face down. Send it to the graveyard. That is not a destruction effect, so it goes to the graveyard guaranteed. The only downside is it can't attack you directly, but it can still help clear your board. But it's 2200. I'm on the fence about this card. I think it could come, but we could only have either it as a skill or one copy, because it is really easy to bring out, and being able to just send a monster to the grave that quickly is huge. But it is only 2200 attack, so even though it can attack twice, it's not exactly the greatest. I think what's more scary is if this gets summoned on an empty board after your board gets cleared. It's just one card lethal, right? One monster lethal, especially if you have one of those other cards that can pop cards. This might be a little too much. So I think I'd like to see it for the Frightfur archetype, but I don't know if I'd want to see it at 3, basically. Maybe limited 1, because that is a very strong effect for how easy it is to bring out. Frightfur Daredevil, 1 Edge Imp monster plus a Fluffle monster. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can inflict 1000 damage to your opponent. This would be halved. If this face-up card you destroy is destroyed by battle or leaves the field because of an opponent's card effect while its owners controls it, you can inflict 500 damage to your opponent for each Frightfur monster in your graveyard. You can only use this effect once per turn. Effect damage is nerfed in Duel Links. It's a 3k monster, so it'd really just be there for the body. This could absolutely come out with no real issues. Frightful Cruel Whale. Now, this is the one that you see a lot in Master Duel. Any Edge Imp monster plus any Fluffle monster, super easy to bring out. If this card is Fusion Summon, you can destroy 1 card on both players' fields. Once per turn, quick effect, you can target 1 Fusion monster you control. Send 1 Frightfur card from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard, except the Cruel Whale. And if you do, the targeted monster gains attack equal to half its original attack until the end of this turn. Now, the really broken combo, I guess, with this is when this is comboed with this card, the Edge M Scythe, where during your opponent's main phase quick effect, you can reveal this card from your hand, fusion summon 1 Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion material, including this card, and a Frightfur fusion monster you control will be destroyed by battle or card effect. You can banish this card from your graveyard instead. So this is kind of the combo, right? You bring out the Cruel Whale on your opponent's turn, and then you can destroy 1 card basically on their turn, and then you can just target yourself and then protect yourself with the Edge M Scythe. So I don't think that this card can come out with the Edge M Scythe, but if this card came out on its own, I think it would be a-okay. I wouldn't be too hard-pressed about it. You would actually have to pay the cost of having to pop a card on your board, and then you have a nice little OTK machine with your Cruel Whale if you wanted to use it. So I think this is okay to come out if we do not get the Scythe, but I feel like the Scythe is so kind of iconic to the deck, maybe not so much in the anime, but to the deck itself, that they may decide not to bring something like the Frightfur Cruel Whale out and instead bring out the Scythe, which means a lot of these fusions actually wouldn't be able to come out, because imagine getting out and being able to, you know, pop 2. Wouldn't want that happening either. And then we have Dangerous Frightfur Nightmare. 1 Edge Up monster plus 2 Fluffle monsters. Gain 300 attack for each fairy and fiend monster in your graveyard during your turn only. When this fusion summon card destroys a monster by battle, you can send Frightful, Fluffle, or Edge Imp monsters from your deck to the grave equal to the original level of the destroyed monster. When your opponent activates a card or effect that targets this card in the field, quick effect, you can banish Frightfur from your extra, negate that effect. So this is just one of those negate monsters. And I think in general, negates just aren't very good in Duel Links. I'm sorry, not very good, but not good for Duel Links, because we have so few of them that whenever they do show up, they tend to be a little overpowered, and in general, Konami doesn't want them, so I don't think something like that will be coming out. So those are all kind of the ace monsters. We already talked about some of the interesting monsters with like Edge and Scythe and stuff like that. So let's talk about well, actually, let's first talk about the Pendulum monsters, because there are 2 Pendulum cards. We're in the Pendulum era, so we might get these. Pendulum Effect, all fusion monsters you control gain 300 attack once per turn. If a Frightfur fusion monster is fusion summoned to your field, you can draw a card. If this card is special summoned, you can inflict 200 damage to your opponent for each Frightfur monster in your graveyard. You can only use this effect once per turn. Very powerful effect with the draw one card. This, along with this card, the Pendulum card, you contribute 1 level 4 or lower Frightfur Fluffle Edge. Special summon this card from your deck. 1 fiend monster with the same level but a different name. You can only use this effect once per turn. And then during your main phase, you can special summon 1 level 4 or lower Frightfur Fluffle Edge monster from your deck. Also, you cannot special summon monsters from your extra deck for the rest of the turn except fusion monsters. You contribute 2 or more fiend monsters. Special summon 1 Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck whose level is the combined original levels of these monsters. You can only use the effect once per turn. Because we're in the Pendulum era, I could see these cards come out as like a skill with heavy restrictions, because they would be kind of overpowered on their own in terms of card economy. But I mean, I don't know. It's up to Konami, right? I think because there's only 2 of them, that it's more likely that we end up seeing them in a skill rather than just straight up being released into the game. Suture Rebirth. Target 1 Fluffle or Frightfur monster in your grave. Special summon it, but its effects are negated. So, you get a little bit of a rebirth potential there, especially if you send a card away. This is going to be really good if you play Polymerization, right? Because you can't polymerize from the graveyard, so you're gonna have to use something like this. I think that's fine for the game. Frightfur Fusion. Fusion summon 1 Frightfur Fusion monster from your extra deck by banishing fusion materials from your field or graveyard. You can only use Frightfur Fusion once per turn. I think fusing from the graveyard is always a tricky situation, especially when you have cards that send Frightfur monsters to the graveyard. I think I would like to see Frightfur Fusion in the game, though. I feel like the Frightfur, as long as you control what fusion monsters can come out, and, things like Scythe and stuff are controlled as well, I don't think we have to be too afraid of the fusion spell. It's more like the Scythe being able to fuse on your opponent's turn that would kind of break the game. I think I'd be cool with Frightfur Fusion coming out. Next up, we have Frightfur Patchwork. You can add an Edge Imp monster and 1 polymerization from your deck to your hand. You can only activate 1 of these per turn. This is probably not going to come to Duel Links, because whenever we see cards that add cards to the hand in Duel Links, especially when they add 2 cards, this would make running polymerization not a brick, because you get 1 of your fusion materials and a polymerization all in 1 card. That is probably too much economy for a Duel Links deck when you're playing 20 cards. Playing this at 3 plus all these other cards and the polymerization, yeah, I don't think it's gonna happen. So I would say no to the Patchwork. Frightfur Reborn. Target a Frightfur monster in your grave. Special summon it during your main phase, except the turn that was sent to the graveyard. You can banish this card from your grave, then target 1 of your banished Fluffle or Frightfur monsters, return it to the graveyard. I could probably see this coming out. It would be able to resummon the fusion, so a little bit of recovery, and it wouldn't really do anything for you in the beginning. You would have to kind of lead your way up to actually being able to use it. Frightfur Repair. Target a Frightfur Fusion monster in your grave, return it to the extra deck, then you can special summon 1 Fluffle or Edge Imp monster from your graveyard. You can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon a Fluffle or Edge Imp monster from your hand. You can only use this effect once per turn. Again, I think this is okay. With a Fusion archetype, it's not too crazy if they flood the board, unless they're going to use that Frightfur Fusion. It's okay if it's in your hand. Toy Parade. It's always treated as a Frightfur card. Target a dark monster you control, special summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. You cannot declare attacks except with that monster. Also, each time that monster destroys a monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, it can attack again in a row. If you control a fairy, except the turn this card is sent to the grave, you can banish this card, add 1 level 4 dark from your graveyard to your hand. You can only use 1 Toy Parade per turn. Not really a Frightfur card, but it is considered a Frightfur card. So this would just enable your Frightfur monster to just keep attacking monsters over and over and over. And then, because it doesn't say attack a monster specifically, be able to get some damage onto your opponent's life points. Probably not going to come out, again, because of the 4K life points in the game. And then just this, in general, feels like a win more cards, so I don't think anyone really cares if it comes out or not. Toy Vendor, another very iconic card from Sora. We're definitely going to get this card, as if not as a skill or a drop. Once per turn, discard 1 card, draw a card, and show it. And if it's a Fluffle, you can special summon 1 monster from your hand. Otherwise, discard the card you drew. If this card is sent to the grave, you can add an Edge Imp Sabers or a Fluffle monster from your deck to your hand. It seems like a very powerful effect, but it's just one of those cards that he uses a lot in the anime, and that's probably just going to cause it to come out. And I think it's okay on its own. I don't think it's going to break the game or anything. Frightfur Factory, you can banish a polymerization spell card or fusion spell card from your graveyard, except Dimension Wave Fusion. Fusion summon one Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or your side field's fusion material. If this card's in the graveyard, you can target one of your banished Frightfur fusions, add it to your hand. You can only use the effect once per turn. So kind of the same idea with the fusions. As long as the fusions themselves are balanced, I would like to see the fusion support to help you get to your fusion monsters be there. And then Frightfur Factory, you would still have to have that poly or that fusion spell in the grave to even use it to begin with, and I think that kind of balances it out. So I think I'd be okay with that. Frightfur Sanctuary, activate this card by discarding one card and send 2 Frightfur monsters from your extra deck to the grave. All fusion monsters you control are also treated as Frightfur monsters. If this card's in the graveyard, you can target one Frightfur fusion monster in your grave or return it to the extra deck. This is just a weird card. I don't know if Konami wants all fusion monsters or become Frightfur monsters. I think that the new way that Konami balances the game, they want to keep everything within their own archetype. So even if this card came out, there's probably going to be some crazy anime skill that locks you into Frightfurs and Fluffles. So I'm going to say on no, just based on Konami principle of I don't even think this card would be used. I mean, and send 2 Frightfuls from your extra deck and then discarding a card. I don't even know if people would use this card, but I'm going to say no, just due to kind of Konami's way of balancing the game. Fluffle Crane, if a Fluffle monster you control is destroyed by opponent's attack or card effect sent to the graveyard, target one of those destroyed monsters, add it to the hand, and if you do draw 1 card, I could see that coming out, no problem. It's very slow, it's a trap card. Target Edge Imp or Fluffle monster in your graveyard, special summon it, and if you do, it's treated as Frightfur for a fusion summon. Again, very slow. The amount, you would have to lose a monster, then summon it, then fuse with it. It's a lot, so I think that's fine. Fusion Fright Waltz, target 1 Frightfur fusion monster you control and 1 fusion monster your opponent controls. Destroy as many other special summon monsters in the field as possible. Then each player that had a monster destroyed by this effect takes damage equal to the combined current attack of the targeted monsters on the field. Probably not going to see this just because of OTK burn damage kind of potential to be abused. So we're probably not going to see this. Even though it's very specific, it would still be used against other fusion monsters. And even if it's halved, some of these monsters can get really high attack and may potentially, you know, end too many games and draws. So 4k life points, we can't use this, unfortunately. Frightfur March, counter trap, and when your opponent's spell trap card or monster effects is activated, that targets a Frightfur monster you control. Negate the activation. If you do, destroy that card, and you can send one of the targeted Frightfur monsters to your graveyard. If you do, special summon level 8 or higher Frightfur fusion monster from your extra deck. During the next end phase, banish the monster special summoned by this effect. Oh man, this is interesting because you'd have to have a Frightfur monster, and then it would have to be targeted. You would destroy the card, and then you summon a Frightfur. You could send that Frightfur monster and then summon a level 8 or higher Frightfur fusion. In terms of levels, that would be all these big ones, and then you would lose the monster. So I think the fact that you lose the monster, I think this would be okay to run. And then if it, it's hard to say because I think a lot of people would just be looking at the counter trap potential of this, right? Rather than the the pop potential. And does this archetype need a negate counter trap? I'm gonna say no. I'm gonna say no because I don't think this archetype needs March, right? To be successful in Duel Links, counter traps are really strong. Even if they lose that monster, getting counter trapped and then OTKing next turn, especially if it's something like the Kraken, I don't know if that's really something we want in the game. So I'm going to say no for now. And then last card, Frightfur Jar. This card's name becomes toy vendor while in the field or graveyard. Once per turn, discard 1 card, draw 1, and show if it's an Edge Imp. You can destroy 1 card in the field. Otherwise, place 1 card from your hand to the top or bottom of your deck. If this card's sent to the graveyard, you can target 1 face-up monster your opponent controls, half its attack until the end of this turn. Basically, just RNG gambling. I would prefer cards like this not come out, but it's probably fine for the actual game itself. And those are all pretty much the important cards. Again, we talked about the Edge M Scythe. All the other Fluffle monsters have like kind of add effects. So for example, if this card's sent to the fusion as a fusion summon, you can target a polymerization in your grave. You can add it to your hand. This card can also be a Frightfur monster. This card, you can add an Edge Imp. That's kind of generally speaking how the Fluffle monsters go. They add multiple cards to your hand or are able to give you recovery. You can, special summon one Fluffle monster from your hand. If this card's sent to the grave, you could draw 2 cards, then discard a card, and then Fluffle Dog, if it's normal or summon, you can add an Edge Imp or Fluffle monster. So they all kind of interact in the same way. So it's just going to be a combination of however much search potential they want to give in the deck. They're going to go through the basic Fluffle monsters because that's really all they're good for. They're just a bunch of small, tiny monsters that have to be fused with or summoned or stuff like that to really get their effects going. There was also Fluffle Dolphin, which was used a lot in Master Duel. You can target one toy vendor in your grave, set it, and if you do, send a Fluffle monster from your deck to the grave. If this card is sent from the grave as a fusion material, you can shuffle this into the deck. One of your fusion spells or polymerizations that have banished from the graveyard only use effect once per turn. That might be a little too strong because it lets you set up toy vendor. But other than that, I think all the little small ones, I think they're fine. Just depends on what combination they want to bring in. And that is Fluffles and Frightfurs. You guys tell me what you think, which cards can come, which cards cannot come. Maybe I forgot about something that wasn't listed here. You can put it down in the comments down below. Hope you guys enjoyed this style of video. Please let me know if you did enjoy this style of video. And that's it. Take it easy, boys. Till next time.